Today, I will be talking about consequentialism. Consequentialism is a moral philosophy. It focuses on the consequences of our actions. It states that an action is right if it leads to good outcomes. Conversely, an action is wrong if it leads to bad outcomes. In essence, the ends justify the means. Imagine you see a child about to run into a busy street. You could push the child back onto the sidewalk, potentially causing them a minor injury. However, this action would prevent them from being hit by a car. A consequentialist would argue that pushing the child, even if it causes some harm, is the right thing to do because it prevents a greater harm. Consequentialism doesn't tell us what is good or bad in itself. It simply tells us to choose actions that lead to the best overall consequences. Different consequentialists might have different ideas about what counts as a good outcome. Some might prioritize happiness, while others might prioritize knowledge, justice, or something else entirely. Consequentialists believe that the morality of an action depends solely on its results. They reject the idea that some actions are inherently right or wrong, regardless of their consequences. This makes consequentialism a form of teleological ethics, which comes from the Greek word telos, meaning end or goal. Consider the act of lying. Most people would agree that lying is generally wrong. However, a consequentialist might argue that lying is permissible, or even obligatory, in certain situations. For example, if a friend gives you a gift that you don't like, lying to say you love it might be considered morally right by a consequentialist to protect their feelings. The key to consequentialist thinking is to focus on the overall impact of our actions. This means considering not only the immediate consequences, but also the long-term effects and the consequences for everyone involved. Consequentialism allows for morally justified lies. The rule against lying is not absolute. Telling the truth generally leads to better outcomes. Imagine a doctor needs to inform a patient about their condition. The condition is severe, but the patient might panic. A consequentialist might argue it's permissible to lie. The lie would prevent panic and ensure the patient follows the treatment plan. The trolley problem. A classic consequentialist dilemma. Imagine a runaway trolley barreling down the railway tracks. Ahead on the tracks are 5 people unable to move. The trolley is headed straight for them. You are standing some distance away on the railway switch. You have time to pull the lever, diverting the trolley onto a different set of tracks. However, there is one person on the side track. Do nothing, and the trolley kills 5 people, or pull the lever, killing one. Is it morally permissible to sacrifice one to save 5? One of the main criticisms of consequentialism is that it is difficult, if not impossible, to predict the consequences of our actions with certainty. The future is inherently uncertain, and our actions can have unintended and unforeseen consequences. This makes it challenging to determine which actions will truly lead to the best overall outcomes. Consider the decision to invest in a new technology. The technology might promise great benefits, such as increased efficiency or reduced pollution. However, it might also have unforeseen negative consequences, such as job displacement or environmental damage. In such cases, it can be difficult to weigh the potential benefits against the potential risks. Critics argue that this uncertainty undermines the practicality of consequentialism as a moral guide. If we can never be sure what the consequences of our actions will be, how can we possibly make moral decisions based on those consequences? Another criticism of consequentialism is that it can sometimes lead to morally counterintuitive conclusions. In certain situations, consequentialism might seem to justify actions that violate our sense of justice or individual rights. Imagine a scenario where a surgeon has 5 patients in need of organ transplants. Each patient will die if they do not receive a transplant soon. The surgeon knows of a healthy person who happens to be a perfect match for all 5 patients. A consequentialist might argue that it is morally permissible for the surgeon to kill the healthy person and harvest their organs to save the 5 patients. This conclusion, however, strikes many people as deeply unjust and a violation of the healthy person's right to life. Critics argue that consequentialism fails to adequately account for the importance of individual rights and the inherent wrongness of certain actions, even if they might lead to a greater good. Many forms of consequentialism, particularly utilitarianism, focus on maximizing happiness or well-being. However, defining and measuring happiness is a notoriously difficult task. What makes one person happy might make another person miserable. Moreover, happiness is a subjective experience that can be influenced by a variety of factors, making it challenging to compare and quantify across different individuals. Imagine trying to determine whether a new policy that benefits the economy but leads to increased working hours would truly increase overall happiness. Some people might welcome the economic benefits and the opportunity to work more, while others might prioritize leisure time and resent the longer working hours. Critics argue that the subjective nature of happiness makes it an unreliable basis for moral decision-making. They contend that consequentialism, by relying on such a slippery concept, lacks a solid foundation for determining right and wrong. Is rule consequentialism a more practical approach? In response to criticisms of act consequentialism, some philosophers propose rule consequentialism. It suggests following moral rules that, if generally adhered to, lead to the best overall consequences. For example, do not kill because a society where people refrain from killing is happier and more prosperous. Even with rare exceptions, rule consequentialists maintain that following the general rule is best. Rule consequentialism focuses on the consequences of following rules rather than individual actions. Consequentialism is a compelling yet controversial moral philosophy that emphasizes the importance of considering the consequences of our actions. It offers a simple and intuitive framework for moral decision-making. Choose the actions that lead to the best overall outcomes. However, consequentialism also faces significant challenges, such as the difficulty of predicting consequences, the potential conflict with justice and individual rights, and the subjective nature of happiness. Despite its limitations, consequentialism remains an influential ethical theory that continues to shape debates about right and wrong. By encouraging us to think carefully about the impact of our actions, consequentialism provides a valuable tool for navigating the complexities of moral decision-making in a world where our choices can have far-reaching consequences. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and click the subscribe button. Thank you and take care.